Oh, not like a camera on you to shake you up a bit. Right. I said there's nothing like a camera on you to shake you up a bit. She's up for the next hour. Hi, more friends coming in.
Yes.
All right, should we begin? Well, first of all, thank you all for being here. I have to say, every single one of these that we've done, there's been some great, amazing surprise that basically makes it so I don't even have to be nervous. Our first one was when I walked up to the theater, there was a sign that said 6:30 showing to the left, Paw Patrol, 7 o'clock, like a performance of Live Through This to the right. And I was like, that alone did it. I can leave now. Like I got the picture for the night. So I have a lot of
welcome to Paw Patrol.
Jen will be doing the character of Chase, and I will be
Zuma.
We're Rocky fans in our house. You know, sanitation.
We
We're
used
the
to,
we're the
but we
working
outgrew
class.
it.
Yeah. We're deep in Paw Patrol. But tonight, we're deep in friendship. So I have a lot of people, and I know the same for Jen. We have a lot of people that we love dearly with all of our hearts in this room. So no matter what happens over the next hour, it really doesn't matter because you guys are here and that's all that counts. So we'll just dick around for 40 minutes. Like
I'm sitting like, you know.
Dick around style.
Remember that? What was it? Was Lily Tomlin? What was it? Where she would sit in that really big chair? I know you're not gonna know. But that's what I feel like in this chair.
Edith Ann.
Little guy in a chair.
So I guess
we're gonna talk.
Yeah, let's introduce Lauren first. Lauren is Lauren's over there in the white, the beautiful girl in the white. She's been handling all the business and all the things and keeping the show running. So a round of applause for Lauren, and she's also an amazing author. And that's Kristen McGuiness, who wrote this beautiful book that I hope you're all going to buy from here tonight, even if you haven't already, because and I always kind of give this spiel of how important bookstores are. I couldn't be more excited. I live in Ojai now, but I kept my rent control apartment around the corner. Shh.
Keep telling everybody.
They know by now.
Don't tell anybody, but
21 years on 9th Street, and I've been dying, of course, like when I moved, thanks Zibby's, but dying for a bookstore, and they're so hard to come by now because Amazon. So keep supporting indie bookstores, and even if you have the book, get another one if you have the money and give it away, or hold on to it for a gift, or just buy it because we want to be able to keep this alive, and the only way to do that is buying books here and also supporting this one. So that's the spiel of that.
Yay.
And also, Kristen started her own publishing house because she's nuts. She's nuts, and wrote a book, and she's editing mine. She's nutso, and the most magical, wizardy nutso person I know. So.
That's saying a lot.
I know. And I know a lot of, right, Linda? So I know a lot of magical, not so wizardy, weirdo people. And somehow in the midst of like everything she was doing, and I don't think she sleeps, which is weird because I sleep way too much.
Well, we got to balance it out. You sleep for me.
She wrote this, and it's so timely. And it's also always timely, which is so nauseating.
Yeah.
And if you haven't read it yet, it's because the sort of center action is a mass shooting. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful book. So really congratulations on that. And on your, I meant to comment on Sunday, we were at Barnes & Noble. I wasn't in conversation, Rob Bell was, but I meant to comment on this. What really struck me, what was such like what lit me up was your relaxation. You're so relaxed up there. And I think that's so important because I don't know what you've attached to this, but when you write a book, so many times it's like we lose, when we make anything, whether it's a film, whether it's something, there's such an attachment to like what it's going to do and how it's going to be, and you just seem so relaxed and peaceful and at ease and joyful and silly, and I thought that was something.
It's because I honestly don't give a shit.
May we all have that. But to be clear, she doesn't mean she doesn't give a shit about the book. She means like what it does.
Yeah.
You know,
I think
what
it's-
the performance of it.
Yeah, I think that's the letting go of any expectations or outcomes. Like I fought and slogged and did everything I could to get this book out there. And that's like all I feel that I need to do. And like I am the publisher of it, so I recognize I have to do other things to make sure it continues to grow, but I don't have any big I'm just like, let it be out there, and like the people it's meaningful for will find it.
Yeah.
And that's all that matters. And like there is a certain like joy in being the publisher of it because nobody's like over my shoulder, like, so what's it doing? You know, like my mom was like, did you check the sales? And I was like, no.
That's
First
the
of all,
thing that everyone asks.
I will check them in January. Like, I'm not gonna like keep tabs at this point. Like, I will seriously. Jamie's like, I actually have access to those numbers that I have in fact checked. I know they do pop up on the screen anytime you go to the Simon & Schuster portal. I'm like, I don't need to know. But truly, like, I don't need to know. And like, I think there's a real like joy in getting to do it that way. And like I said, I mean, like the Paw Patrol sign, like. As long as the Paw Patrol sign is there, like I'm good. And like right before, the reason why I was so relaxed on Sunday, right before it began, a friend of mine who I worked with at Simon & Schuster 24 years ago, like I was sitting there and all of a sudden I hear from behind me, hi, old friend. And I turned around, I didn't see her in 19 years until that moment. And I was like, I don't care what happens today. Like, I just got reunited with a friend I haven't seen in 19 years. And then I found out she was 20 minutes away from me. And like, I'm just so thrilled that like her life is back in my life that I was like, let's just sit down and do the thing. Like I'm done here. And I feel the same way. And I will say this today. Yes, I have to double kudos Lauren, because not only is she the director of publicity for Rise Books, and not only did I drag her into the slog with me, but also we have literally been together for almost 8 days straight. And I think we're still having fun. And so I see marriage in our future. But also I want to say to Jamie Lou, who's sitting right next to her, Jamie has actually been along for this ride even longer. Like I found her on a mom's Facebook group 3 years ago, and I was like, I'm starting this book coaching company. I need help. And she was like, sounds great. We had never met, like literally found her on like a mommy group. And I was like, but I went to mommy groups because I was like, I need someone who can help and like knows how to get shit done. And there's one group on this planet who knows that very well. That I even have to interview them, and that's moms. And so I found Jamie there, and she's been along with me, including last year in like one of the darker moments of starting a business, which has very bright lights. And I look at Rosa because as a fellow entrepreneur, I know her journey too, also very dark moments. And Jamie at one point was like, this is the dark night of your soul, and I'm bringing a lantern. And she literally gave me a lantern, and all this was like the best gift ever. And then I have to just do 2 more shout outs, because one of my oldest and dearest friends, both in age and how long I've known him, Gabriel Laurie, who is my older brother, but we have also rocked a path of recovery together. And one of my other best friends, Lily, dropped me off on his doorstep almost 20 years ago and was like, here, you take her. And I'm not kidding, like literally, she walked off and I was like, I don't know him, and this house is sketchy. And he showed, and we went and like.
That's what she said when she dropped her daughter off at my house.
Take her. And she has a lot of fun with you, and I went on to have a lot of fun with Gob. And then also Miss Kathleen Craig over here, who is actually the bassist of one of the main characters in this book, Rose, along with Zibby, who dropped me off on Gob's doorstep. But when you texted me today and you said you were coming, you were my Paw Patrol sign. I was like, it doesn't freaking matter what happens tonight, because Kathleen's going to be there. And so check that off the list. So I think that like that's the joy of like a book tour, and that's the joy of like going out and getting to like share the things you're doing is like, yeah, I need money. I mean, like, we're literally like, we have to sell the house, I think. But but that's not like why I'm here. Like the joy.
What? You didn't write a book to get rich?
I might be a wizard, but I'm not an idiot. So yeah, I know what writing a book does. But writing a book really brings people together. And I think that's what the whole point is that like we read something and it has meaning for us, and we find somebody else who it has meaning for, and like we bond over that meaning. And I will say this about books, like I've worked in book publishing for over 20,000 years, as we all know. And the one thing that sells a book is actually not billboards or trailers. That's why they don't make billboards and trailers for most books. It's word of mouth. It's the like, I read this and I loved it. And that's what sells books. So that's all I can ever ask for anyway, is that they love it and they tell someone else they love it. And that's how we read and buy books in this world. So that's why there aren't fancy trailers and big billboards for them, like albums and movies. So anyway, that's my spiel.
Well, it's a good spiel. It's a great spiel. And I would imagine the world if we all embodied that with anything that we did or made. Whether you're an artist or not, I believe everyone has the divine creative spirit in them, whether or not that's how you make your living, because who gives a shit? Most artists, frankly, don't make their living from their art. But imagine if we all were able to do that. And it's what I started painting only like a year ago, and it's what I do with that. I'm like, why can't I take that? And I will be, and I have, but that lack of attachment, just sort of, just to create, so I think it's a beautiful thing. And it's a beautiful novel, and I know you want to read. I think we should start by having you actually read. Something different than she read on Sunday. Doesn't make a difference because only a couple of you were there, but I'm excited for this portion.
It actually feels very like so I will say on Sunday I read a portion of the book where the main character, there is a mass shooting. It's not, it takes place in chapter 2. It's no big spoiler alert. I set it up front so I didn't have to be like, something happens that I can't tell you about. And that makes it really hard to talk about what the book is. And in that opening scene, the character of Jane, the main character, and her best friend Rose are talking outside of a bar, and then they go into that bar and the musician starts to perform and a shooting takes place. So a shooter walks into the building with an assault weapon and kills 11 people. And so this is months later. And so those two same characters are back at another bar for a benefit concert that the band who was performing the night of the shooting is actually holding for survivors of that shooting. And one of the reasons why I wrote Live Through This was it was in 2016 and there were a lot of shootings that year. The one that inspired me to write was the Paul shooting. And as I will say, I'll share briefly. I was working in a nonprofit and I was very, very miserable. And it wasn't the nonprofit's fault. It just was not what I was supposed to be doing. And I worked in a courthouse in Monterey Park. And before then I'd written a book. I'd worked in film. I'd worked in book publishing. I was part of the O.J. Simpson confession. And then I was literally doing copy and paste jobs all day long, at a cubicle in a very brown, DCFS type office, the Department of Children and Family Services. And I was just this was not my dream in life, right? And so I came up with an idea. I was I got to get out of here. So I tried to convince Kathleen to do a web series with me, wherein we would role play Grey Gardens and tap dance. And I had a whole series of things, and I convinced our other friend Joel to film us on my daughter's first birthday party, going to Chinatown to pick up my favorite cake. And it was just going to be the shenanigans of Kathleen and Kristen. And after the first taping, I was like, okay, when do you want to do the tap dancing piece? And she was kind of in as gentle a way she could say, it was never. And I was fuck, the web series is out. How am I going to get out of this office? So I was I'll write a book. So if Kathleen had not said no to the web series, we might not all be here now. I do still have the tap shoes. So they're waiting. They're waiting. It'll come around. It'll come back around. So anyway, so this is sort of the other side of it. So I was inspired the night of the Pulse shooting to write about a mass shooting, but that inspiration actually had been rooted even months before there was a shooting and terrorist attack in Paris at the Bataclan Theater. That happened in the neighborhood. I actually know, Kathleen and I know each other from Paris. And I lived around the corner from that theater. I wasn't living there at that time. Someone was actually shot on the street corner where we did live. And we knew people in the band, Eagles of Death Metal. And so they did a benefit concert many months afterwards, which was really like hard for everybody that was involved with that. And lead singer, I don't think ever got his sanity back. I don't know that he had it in the first place, but definitely didn't get it back after that. And so I was writing to that. So this is these two characters going to this benefit show. Fuck. I cough lightly into the cloud of smoke that now fills the alleyway. Is it okay? Rose asks, watching me like a nervous teenager as I try to take a drag off the cigarette she has just given me. I lean my head against the stucco building in Echo Park where the John Thomas benefit is being held. Once upon a time, I used to dance at this same club. I was newly sober, hanging out with my sober friends in Rose, meeting cute boys, and believing my second chance at life was finally about to begin. I looked down at the American spirit, softly shaking my head, knowing how angry Theo would be if he saw me indulging in this habit he hated so much. I don't think I've ever needed a cigarette more in my life, I finally laugh, slowly inhaling the tobacco, working my way around the need to cough. We can go, Rose suggests. Nah, I stare dimly at the cigarette. I should stay. You hanging in there? Rose asks, finally lighting up a cigarette herself. I shake my head, leaning it back again, one foot on the wall, staring up at a starless sky. Nope. You want to talk about it? Not really. I know Rose deserves more than that. Few people knew Theo and me more intimately than this friend who once regularly crashed on our couch, who was the only friend we allowed to visit us in the hospital on the day that Zoe was born, because she brought in and out. Even now, she and Maggie are the only people I feel I can trust outside of Yvette. Rose doesn't say anything, doesn't try to fill the air with words like so many other people around us. She just leans her own head back as though there might be something interesting, and the blackened carpet above our heads, the bright lights of Los Angeles, blocking out the starry night above. I take another drag, breaking from our reverie. I just don't know how to do this. Janie, I don't think anybody does. What happened? None of this is natural. It's not how we should be existing at this point on the planet. Maybe not. I finish the last drag and look up just in time to see Maggie approaching. You girls partying without me? She calls out as I look to Rose. Though we thought we both could use some extra moral support, Rose explains. Maggie grabs me in an overwhelming embrace before breaking into exaggerated coughing. Shit, don't tell me Rosie got you smoking again, she jeers. It was just one, I try to reply. Yeah, that's what you said when you were 15. I put my arm around Maggie's waist and smile at Rose. I'm not sure what any of this means, but after years of marriage and divorce and distance, I'm glad to be back with my friends. The door to the club opens. Someone is taking the stage. The sound from within sucking us into the club and back into the memory of the last time I walked into a bar to hear John Thomas perform. 2 months ago, and time has become an inexplicable ghost, weeks flashing by, seconds dragging on, disappearing and emerging without reason. And yet another blink of an eye, I am standing in the audience as John Thomas and the band set up with the same methodical calm as the night of the shooting. The audience moves towards the stage. The energy is building, the back door opening, the first shots exploding.
How'd that feel? I love that she's knitting.
I'll start tap dancing.
I was going to ask you to tap dance and to teach me how to knit. So why did you choose to read that particular section tonight?
Well, so because of you, the other day, and I don't remember what it was, where we were, and it said something about the book being about friendship. And it was funny because I was like, I don't really think about that. But in fact, that's exactly like, if you were like, what's the book about? And yeah, it's about a mass shooting. It's about a marriage. It's about grief. It's about like all these really big things.
Oh, I said that,
And
I think at Barnes and Noble, maybe.
On the IG Live.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was on the IG Live.
Okay.
Yeah, we did an IG Live. And you said that about friendship, and I was like, ooh, like I love that. And I don't, and then I have all these wonderful friends in this room, so I felt appropriate to shout, and you. I mean, so Jen Pastiloff and I have been through so much together in the last couple of years that most people think we've been friends for like 30 years. And I know Jen has that with a lot of people, but like we didn't know we would become neighbors and then literally go through like the toughest times in our life, like categorically, like the biggest shit that can ever happen to people has happened to us. So it's like we not only like became neighbors, but then we literally like built a trench.
Yeah.
And we dug in.
Family, then.
Yeah.
She has 2 kids, I think. Yeah.
3, including yours.
I was just gonna say. And it's like a lot of times, and my son weirdly looks more like her. He's like light hair and blue eyes, and his dad is brown eyes, and I have like, I don't know, brownish. So, is he yours? So, yeah, friendship. I mean, I think it's interesting too how often blind spots occur. Like we can't. I will lead a retreat or something, and I'll be like, I don't know how to describe it. What was that? And the way that other people can often distill what we've said or the experience of something that we're not even, and especially because you're focused on the shooting, the marriage, that you're like, even though it's there, like it's intrinsic for you, but you don't recognize that. And when I talk about you behind your back, which is a lot, always amazingly, I say, the thing about you that, I mean, there's so many things, but Kristen is I mean, we're such cheerleaders for each other. And also, I mean, more than just a simple cheerleader, like she actually, my book deal is because of her. Because I can write, I think, sometimes when I do, which is rare, but I cannot do a book proposal. I have ADD and my brain, I hear the word structure or organize and my butthole clenches. I said what I said. And she is like a master at that.
My butthole relaxed.
But also it's weird because she's also good at all the other stuff too, which is not that common. It's a certain skill set. I know I sound like Liam Neeson at Taken, but it's a certain skill set, and she has that. But Kristen doesn't have any jealousy. I'm not saying you've never gotten jealous in your life, but there's no sense of like not enoughness, or it's pure, and about everyone, this is just how she is, it's just a genuine, true friend with such integrity and honor. I mean, that sounds like, I don't know, sort of not pompous, but like formal. But there's a real sense of honor being your friend. You're so the real deal. And when you think about, I mean, friendships are so important to me. And when you think about showing up for someone, I mean, you will, like, in the middle of the night, I have a bunch of friends like this who are like, where's the body?
If I got the text message that she did once text me in the middle of the night, and she was like, how were you not awake? It was like the one night I went to bed early. I was like, I don't know. I'm always awake at that time. And that one night I went to bed early.
I was having terrible headaches, so I went to the ER, and I call them my lesbians. I don't own them, but somehow Amanda and her wife took me, and they dropped me off, and hi, like, you can't get an Uber or a cab. No, and I lived very close, like a mile maybe, but it was like 11 o'clock at night, and it was absurd. I was stuck at the hospital, and I tried to call her, no answer, text. It's hilarious because she never sleeps. It's like the one time, but barring that,
I will always be at the hospital. Yeah, I mean, I think that's where, I mean, like I said, when you mentioned that piece of friendship in this book, like I was like, yeah, I mean, because that is the thing, right? Like when life falls apart, and your dear friend Lydia like said that in the amazing blurb, about like life falling apart, and like when life falls apart, and Jen got to spend an enormous amount of time with my grandmother a couple weeks ago, and then was like, I see why you rely on your friends so much. I was like, yes. They were not to be trusted. And so friends were, not family. And but I do think, like, especially this character, like, that's how she navigates it, is through these friendships that buoy her and that guide her, and that she can rely on. And it's funny because at the end of the book, she ends up moving off with one of the friends. And one of the main criticisms was like, I don't have a friend that would move with me somewhere. And I was like, really? You don't? Like, I mean, I actually, Kathleen, if I was like, we're going to New York City, she'd be like, what time? As long as you got a spot for Bowie. And like, so I just think, like, when friendships are that critical to your life, like, that is how you navigate joy, and that is how you navigate grief. And even when you do have and I have a solid partner, I mean, he drives me nuts, but he's also like my best friend. And and that's like the crux of our relationship, is like, he is my best friend, and so I think that, like, that idea of how friendship is ultimately what sustains us,
It absolutely does. And we all deserve, and I will die on this hill. I really want to stop saying that, because if I die on a hill, it's going to be so awkward. It really will be, because I say it so much.
It'll be so perfect, though.
It'll be kind of perfect.
Like, she died on a hill. This one.
That we all deserve to have friends that, I had a friend, a very, very dear friend. And I noticed you cut all that part of my book, and I'm glad, most of it, but who it's been more than a year, didn't approve of I left my marriage and I fell in love with someone else. But there was always a sense of, I couldn't share my good news with this person. Does anyone raise their hand if you have a friend like that? I think as we get older, my guess is as we get older, Linda just had a birthday. 7, how old?
Maybe.
Yeah, you just had a birthday.
75.
Happy birthday. Okay,
Wow.
so my question is, as we get older, I feel like it drops away. That was the last of that. And so my guess is, as we get older, my hope is that our tolerance for, why am I holding on to a person who I can't share my good news with, right?
Exactly.
And so this is the opposite of that. And we all deserve that, reciprocity, and someone who, I really, really, really feel this, like, your success is mine, and I feel that. I mean, I have goosebumps, I feel that. And I also feel when people don't feel that way about me. And that's okay, not everyone will, but our people, they better. Or else it's time to investigate, why are they our people? Like, why are we, holding them so close, and I understand family, that's complicated, but I'm talking, Wayne Dyer used to always say, your friends are God's way of apologizing for your family. And he had 8 kids who he loved.
Such good friends.
Well, really, I mean, your grandma was lovely, but also some of the things that came out of her mouth, I just wanted to, like, cuddle you, and I said to your grandma, I hope it's okay, I'm serious, but I'm like, you are so lucky she's fully formed. Well, are you? Because some of the stuff that she said, I think if, like, a young person heard it and took this on as like, for example, a measure of success would be like, when this sells 1 million copies.
There's actually a direct quote. Rose and I have very similar family dynamics. My grandmother,
I'll be proud of you when it sells 1 million copies.
Yeah, that was literally the quote that she said to her. We were like, 1 million copies. I was like, that lady, that ain't happening. I mean, maybe, but like, in the world of book publishing, yeah, 1 million, literally 1 million copies. I was like, 1 million? I have to get to 1 million copies. But yeah, and I think that's the thing about, like, being competitive. Like, I was a terrible sportsman.
Me too.
I was always the last pick for the team because I didn't care. I didn't give a shit. I just didn't give a shit. And after a while, I didn't care that you picked me last for the team either. It didn't bother me. So, like, I got no sense of competition with anybody because I never won and I didn't care. And honestly, if there's anything that is, like, destroying our world, it's actually not greed. It's competition. It's this, I've got to be better than you, right? I mean, that's what this land dispute ultimately is, right? That's what violence ultimately is I got to prove that I am better, bigger, something else than you, which is just so fucking stupid because we all have buttholes that clench and release all day long. So, like, it's pretty even feel.
Or I mean, it's also like, I matter.
Yeah.
So many of us walk through our life feeling like I don't matter. So many people will like, I don't want to say anything. Why would I matter? What? Why would you not? It's like you don't have to have a book to matter, or money, or be a doctor, or whatever. And so there's like something that gives me meaning, that I matter. And that's why I think it was very triggered by the thing of like, well, when that sells 1 million copies, then you'll matter, then I'll matter, then I'll, and it's this idea of it's always over there. It's always over there. And so, friendships, they do, I think they sustain us. And I really believe that our people are everywhere. And I always say the secret to my success, that is not a secret at all, is being open, staying open. Because when you're open, they're everywhere. If you just look around, they're everywhere. And I'm not like, sometimes you'll want to get on a plane and you don't want to talk to the person next to you, fine. That's okay too. But like all these opportunities we miss because we're not open. We would never, so many, you, literally so many people in this room, if I had not been open, it would have been like ships in the night. Same with my love. And so it's about staying open and the vulnerability to that. And especially as we get older, and I think this is important for you to hear, because a common myth.
I was just like going back to knitting.
How old are you, Miss Knitter? 10? Okay. So common myth that people say, I don't know, as an adult, or let's say it's so hard to make friends as an adult. Has anyone heard that? Everyone hears that, right? And I'm like, what? Huh? That's not my experience, but I'm not this magical creature. It's just I stay open. And granted, it's easier when you're 10, you're in school. Fine, it's not easier. I actually wouldn't go back to 10, but God bless you. I can't even thread a needle. And my mother, for a long time,
You didn't knit at 10.
My mom sewed curtains for a living. My mom was a sewer, and I don't know how to thread a needle. So lessons. But I also don't really have a desire. Although watching you knit, I'm just sort of.
Oh no, she's gonna take on knitting.
I'm really.
I don't know what happened with you guys. It went wild.
But I'm very awe-inspired, because I think like my son would have his iPad, and like I love you just sitting there knitting. It's all relaxing. I'm like getting relaxed watching you. Yeah, it's just cool. But anyway, the idea that it's harder to make friends, or you can't, or it's nonsense. It really is, and it's like any other thing. It's about being vulnerable, And most people are just afraid. They're just afraid you won't like me, this thing. And so we keep our eyes on. And if we keep our eyes up and our heart open, well, all this magic is everywhere. It's everywhere. And you're a master friend, a master editor, a master writer, not a master chef, but you're okay. You're okay.
I know how to order food very, very well. So I was gonna close with a reading or a Q&A. I have one other piece I'd like to read because we're here. And
Yeah.
and it continues. It's actually about the Sweat Lodge. Which is not true, but it is. But it's also about, again, I think these relationships that sustain us. And this is a very weird departure. I didn't know how to bring this in, but I felt like I wanted to read this somewhere, and this felt like the place to read it. So the character becomes widowed in the book, but she keeps seeing her husband and greeting him on the other side. And this is really about trauma and tragedy, and I think ultimately about how we guide each other through that space.
Mm.
I step into the teepee where the women do their prayers before the sweat, immediately recognizing a few women from the organization, a nonprofit she becomes a part of at some point around gun violence. We all hug each other as Zoe, the baby, runs around the large structure, squealing before falling into one of the beanbags that are scattered about for guests. The women all agree to take turns watching Zoe. Finally, Alyssa joins the group, opening the ceremony with a few clear shakes of her rattle, which we pass around as we share why we are there and what we hope to experience. She smiles deeply. I've been thinking a lot about this sweat all week, And I want you all to know that it takes enormous courage to face the totality of life without withdrawing from it, without trying to shield ourselves. Alyssa finally catches my eye. The question is, how can we embrace tragedy on its own terms? How can we find that affirmation of life that comes when we have been broken by it? This is what I owe Zoe. I need to show her that she doesn't need to be afraid of the dark. Even as the bullets echo, even as I can smell the dust and beer on the ground, the scent of gunpowder and Theo's flesh, we cannot hide from the tragedy of this world at the cost of its beauty. I want the passion to flow so freely through Zoe's blood that she never has to question herself. I wonder whether healing from trauma isn't about resiliency at all. We will break, but rather true healing is about generosity. When we no longer live in fear of the world around us, we can truly become a part of it. We can love from the most generous space, the place I wasn't able to offer Theo in the real world, but I am learning to offer him now. Alyssa slowly beats her leather-bound drum, singing quietly while alternately pouring water over the rocks, which hiss and steam into the blackness as the women release their pain and stress and frustration through guttural noises. Some cry, some scream, some laugh, others stay silent. I lie in the dark and remember my first sweat lodge with Theo. We had found each other hot and sweaty in the dark during the third round. As people howled around us, Theo kissed the tears from my face, and I licked the sweat from his neck. Animals in the dark, we clung to each other. I close my eyes, and there I am. There we are. The saloon is empty, and I am standing in the middle of the dance floor, a flashback to the night where he died. Theo sits across from me on the stage. He looks up like he's been waiting for me. Hey, buddy, he smiles. And before I know it, I am running across the room, and I am in his arms, and everything that stopped us from having this moment when he was alive is gone. He lifts me up, and my lips fall on his, and I kiss him in a way I never knew how. I feel my whole body melt into his, and he holds me, and the tears fall from my face as I finally tell him, I loved you. I loved all of you, but I didn't know how to let go of everything out there. He pushes the hair back from my forehead, and his strong and handsome face leans over mine. He slowly dances with me as though there is phantom music playing. I remember every detail of his sunburnt eyes and his strong cheekbones. He leans his mouth down to my ears. You were my everything. I feel him fading. I've never been in the journey this long, and I pull back to see him walking away. Theo, I call, and he turns around. I'm going to fight. I know, he smiles. Never give up, Janie. Never give up. And then he stops. He stares off for a moment, and I see the crack even beyond the veil, the losses we can never stave. He turns to me. Tell Zoe. Tell her I'll always be with her, okay? I feel my body shake as he smiles that great big Theo Caros smile, and he walks out the back door of the saloon, the same one Martin Montgomery entered months before, the one that brought us here to this space beyond time, allowing Theo and me to finally find the love that eluded us in life.
No, that wasn't sarcastic. It didn't sound it. No, I meant like, I'm really glad you were like, wait, I have an itch to read this. Because I was watching, everyone was crying, and you did that. That's my hair thing, you thief.
I told you I had it.
It's so ugly, and I could never find hair things at this point. But you couldn't see because you were reading. But that's the thing. That's the thing we want to do, right? Is connect, is move people, whether it's laughter, tears, whatever, everyone. So. Also, I'm a poet. It feels awesome to say that. And what I love about a novel is first of all, how autobiographical they are. It's amazing. I think with novels, they're always, they say, more revealing than memoir, because I think, although I haven't written one yet, we think we're like, oh, it's a novel. Like, somehow it's, I don't know, you end up kind of revealing more. But I love like all the poetry in it. There's all these lines that are like, oh, there's a poem, there's a poem, there's a poem, that line. There was a couple lines in there where I was like, oh my God, stop. I need to just sit with that. profundity of what you just said. I love that part, and it's just so sad and beautiful and true. Thank you. Pretty magic, isn't it? Like she made this from nothing. Well, from something, from her imagination. But how cool is that? You know?
The joy of writing.
Mm-hmm.
It's the joy of writing. I mean,
Really?
yeah.
It's just it's I think it's so wonderful, and it's awesome to see as your beloved friend watching the power and the effect that your words had on everyone. It was so special to see. I saw it for you because you couldn't, you know, and it was I mean, there's nothing like it to look out and see everyone wrapped, eyes filled, and just like it was spectacular. So yeah. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Feedback? I hate that word.
Criticisms? Criticisms?
Any criticism?
Any insults?
Any compliments? Yes.
Yes.
I have a compliment. I was just really moved by that last chapter, and it made me think that each of us has dead people with us at all times. And it's sort of like, who's hunting who? Like, what is this world we're in? And I just love the way that, like, that amends got made. And I just love the way that it felt so correct to me, and it felt very healing. And I think I'm going to cry too, but I think that was something that you were seeing on our faces of just like, sometimes I think we get so like, okay, so they're dead. So now we have to like move on. And it's like, but where, like, yeah, I just thought that was so beautiful. So that's my compliment to you.
Yeah, no, I have a real.
Well, it was so real because she actually, the other day, she was like telling me, I was sitting in this chair and she was talking about this ghost that sits there all the time. She lives like that. That's why it didn't, but what I'm saying is, it didn't feel contrived. It didn't feel contrived because she was writing from, it was true to her, you know. I'm not saying that everything we write has to be true, not necessarily factually true, but true. And it was, like, she actually believes that. And
Well, I had actually, so the funny thing is, when I first wrote this, the character does not meet, like, she did not meet with him ever in the after. Like, that element wasn't there, even though I do weird witchy shit personally. Like, that's my side gig. And so, as someone would say, you don't really lead with your witch. I'm like, no, but she's there. And and the woman who is, I didn't even change her name. Her name is Alyssa. And she was a woman who I used to do shamanic journeying with. And then she had a partner, Paul, who led Sweat Lodge up in Ojai. That's why I live there now and why she lives there. It's actually Paul Perota. And he passed in 2020, which was a really horrific death of 2020, losing Paul from this planet. But and he would lead Sweat Lodge in the Ojai Foundation. Kathleen did it with me too. And it was really powerful and moving. And I knew I wanted to include that in there. But in 2021, my uncle passed away, and it was a horrific death, just in terms of like who he was. Like a lot of people have uncles, but like he wasn't just, he was like my number one. He was the only person I could trust in my family. Like everybody else is like, we'll be proud of when you sell 1 million copies. And Vic was like, I am so proud of you just for breathing, you know? And when he died, I actually had a very like post-life experience with him. And like, he was so present with me and like walked me through my grief of him. And I had these like wild stories around that were just like mind blowing, that my husband was witness to all of it. And was just like, he's like, I believe now too. Because I just can't not anymore. And I was like, how can I not include that? Like, how can I not have that and give them, and actually it was funny, like a friend sort of said, like, you can't fall in love with a ghost. And I was like, no, I disagree. I want her to be able to fall in love with him afterwards, because of course she can. It's so hard to be in love. It's so hard. I mean, it opens, the front of the book opens with my only joke ever, which is that marriage is like the biggest, like most corrupt science ever. Because like, although, I mean, we've been together now 8 days and it was awesome. Thank you. I love that you pointed to Katya that I don't give the rest of the joke.
pointing to what?
she knows that this joke is X-rated, and she's pointing to Katya that I don't do the full joke. She's like, don't do the punchline because it's too much for Katya. I hear
Everybody
that.
can just read the opening chapter.
You can read the opening chapter.
It's like literally the second line.
But it is
And
true,
then
like
someone-
what we have to do in marriage, and then some, hint, hint, wink, wink. But like we have to carry all of these weights of financial burden and the traumas we grew up with, and like paying the mortgage or the rent, or like, and then you have kids, right? And that's really hard. No offense, Katya, it is, you know. And like, and it's really hard to find the soft loveliness in a marriage anymore. And it becomes very like bone on bone, you know. There's no cartilage left, and so when the husband dies, there's actually space for the cartilage again. There's space for the romance that was gone by the time, you know, it happens. And so I was like, no, I want her to fall in love with the ghost. And so she gets to do that and gets to have that love that was sort of robbed, because
That's
real
our
life
next book,
is
Falling
hard.
in Love with the How to.
How to
Fall in love with the ghost.
my first self-help book. How to fall in love with a ghost and tell X-rated jokes in front of 10-year-olds. Hillary, I
This
saw you.
this line though, this was the one that the thing about we cannot hide from the tragedy of this world at the cost of its beauty. Oh. I mean, it's like, does anyone have Spotify? Put on Bette Midler, The Rose, right? It is. That's what it is, and it's like I mean, that's the thing, right, about staying open. Is like if we've been hurt, and by now, most of us have that are beyond 10 years old, or experience loss. You know, one alternative is to shut down or close our hearts, or live in fear or in the dark, literally or not. And that's heartbreaking, right? And I just love the way you worded that here.
Well, I think it's a weird time to be going like on a book tour and like celebrating and like being keenly aware of that there are parts of this planet that are just utterly devastated and continuing to be utterly devastated every day right now. And it's like, I was with a friend on set, actually, the actress Juliette Lewis, like she and I were saying, I was like, this is like a weird time. And she's like, but this is when we do celebrate art, right? And I was like, yeah, because otherwise it's all bombs and sadness.
Mhm.
And then we were like, that's like a song, but it is, right? Because otherwise it's all bombs and sadness and horrible things and loss. And like, we have to like celebrating the joy and the beauty in the art is really a part of it. Hillary.
So just a comment thinking about Jen, what you were talking about being open, and I listened to you read on being human, and that was a great way of thinking of how you bring openness to people, pulling them into experiences, but thinking about being open, at least in my life as an adult, what has made it most open is being open to friendship and deep connections is 12-step rooms and writing groups, writing classes, writing programs.
Yeah.
But so, and I've forgotten the acknowledgements, the connection of Diana, but Kristen, what was the process like for you of actually writing the book? How much did you just sit up in Ojai and write it? When did you, I know you did the workshop or whatever it was, class with Diana.
So I love that. And I was actually, as you were, I was like, oh, I'm going to tell the Diana story. Because I tell the story of that workshop all the time to people about writing. Because, so I wrote the book in 2016 in like a year. I had a 1-year-old, which was, you know, it was like the thing that I did when I wasn't working in that office job. And since Kathleen wasn't down for the web series, so I started writing it, and I wrote it from 2016 until 2017, and it's set in 2016. So, I mean, I was writing it in live time. I did not anticipate how that year was going to turn out, whether out of naivete or not. I just thought like, and Hillary's going to be president. I was personally a Bernie Sanders fan, so I was a little disappointed by that, but I was certainly way more disappointed.
She still has Bernie Sanders poster in her
I
office.
do, in my office. And it's like shows up, and I'm like, just so everybody knows, so there's no confusion over my politics. Because I'm not quiet about it. I do it in code. Like, you can pay me and I'm going to share my politics. Like, it's not something I like. I'm like, I have to tuck this back for professional reasons. I'm like, you don't agree, you can leave. So this space that I wrote the book, And then I went and took it to agents. And I've worked in book publishing. Like I know people, I have friends, Cal Morgan, I have like agent friends, and I could not get an agent and I was bereft. And I went and one of my agent friends said, like, maybe get a private editor. And I did. It was okay. I mean, it's fine. And then I met Hillary. And she was like, hey, I have a friend and she's got this writing workshop. And I always say there was this moment in Diana's house, like her beautiful home in Echo Park that feels like a tree house already. And it was 6 of us discussing our novels, and we would all read each other's novels, and then we would spend an entire 3-hour session talking about each other's books. It was one of the greatest ways to workshop a book. I absolutely loved it, and it's informed so much of this book. And but the best part was like one day she would always give us tea and like oranges. And I was sitting there, and like it wasn't even my book. We were talking about someone else's book, and like a gentle breeze blew through the room, and I was drinking hot tea and having an orange, and I was like, it was kind of like the Paw Patrol poster. I was like, you know what? I don't even care what happens with this book because this is the moment. Like, this is what I'm writing for. Like, I'm writing to be in community with other writers, drinking tea and eating oranges and enjoying this beautiful day in this gorgeous home with this brilliant teacher, Diana. And like, if something happens, that's awesome. But if not, I got this. And like, I now create those same communities. And like, I always tell people, like, because I do them on Zoom, and I always want to send people a bag of oranges in like a tea bag and be like, this is what I learned. This is the most beautiful part of it.
Yeah, I'm just laughing because it's so obvious you're sober. Because with me, there'd be like pizza and wine and tacos and beers.
Tea and oranges. And a light breeze. Yeah. Just a light charming breeze.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah, and it was. So, and I have you to thank for that. So it's really special to have you here. That was such a huge part of this book. And it's why I always tell people, like, don't get bummed out if people don't like it. Go find people that do. Find writing communities. There's like so much joy in that. Yeah. And like,
yes,
I just like, that's where, and that does, it takes it's the Paw Patrol poster. It just takes that, you're like, fuck it, I don't care what happens. This is fun, and like, and I say, like, I don't have a lot of money. I have a lot of fun.
I love that.
So if it's not fun, who the fuck cares? Go home. It'll be boring somewhere else. Is that it? I have to say, she mentioned Bette Midler, and I truly would like to advertise this event. And Lauren caught it the other day and like died laughing. I'm like, I'm so glad someone got this. So I've been like putting music to every little like Instagram post I do. So for this one, I did Bette Midler.
No. See, I think I must have had it on mute. Or
I
it
did
was like,
Wind Beneath My Wings.
No.
I was like,
Oh my God.
And I was like, I feel like we have a beaches relationship.
Oh, that's funny that I brought up that. I play that song a lot in my workshops. It's so emotionally manipulative. Gross. But there's a reason. It's like actually the words. I mean, it's so heartbreaking, right? It's the line. It's this thing you said. It's like, oh my God, the soul afraid of dying that never learns to live. That's why people cry. But it's that you distilled it in one sentence, that whole song. But I mean, you're not going to get as rich as she did from that song. Although she probably didn't write. Well, maybe she did.
I think she
Prince write it? I don't know.
I don't know.
Prince wrote a lot. Anyway, your community is everywhere. Look around. This is your community. You're finding community. That's the shit. That's everything.
It makes it all worth it. So then you don't have to care. Then you don't have to give a shit because it was fun, and that's all that really matters.
Well, I think let's be clear though. When you say you don't care, you're not. You're talking about caring about the good opinion of other people, or caring about like the performance of it. Not you don't care about the.
You can care about the art, but it's about like what we were talking with Rob. It's like not caring about like is the New Yorker going to pay attention? No, they're not. They don't like me, so
Right.
I've learned that. Like, it's okay.
No, they don't like you. They just don't know.
I know. I
Who
don't
you
think
are.
they do like me. I don't like them either. It's fine. It's mutual. I like the Atlantic. I would like them to like me. But no, I mean, I think it is though. It's like that's wonderful if all that happens. Of course, it's not to say like. I mean, I plan for it to be a movie starring Lady Gaga. It's not like I don't have ambitions here, but like at the same time, truly, and it will be. But the New Yorker is probably never going to write about it, so that's fine. Like, I'll take Lady Gaga over the New Yorker any day.
Isn't it gonna be fun when we all get together with the New Yorker article?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be like, oh my god, we're gonna have tea and oranges and a breeze, and we're gonna be like, yeah. Oh my god, you guys remember when she said the New Yorker? And be like,
They're like the rave review, and I'm like, they like me. They really like me. No, but I think it is. It's just enjoying the joy of it all, the beauty of it, and that's.
I'm here for it. I am here for it. I did another book published today by my friend Karen Wallenrod. I don't know if you guys have it here. It's called Radiant Rebellion, and we did an Instagram live last night. It really is about that. It's about, aging joyfully. She's 55, and it's that. It's finding, and she was talking about the difference between joy and happiness, and joy just seems to have more meaning. Happiness is more fleeting, and just finding the joy in it, and finding those moments like this, coming together in community, or finding ridiculous things to laugh at, or all of it. That's what it's about, not the like, what are the numbers doing? What's your bank account doing? Obviously we have to feed ourselves and our family, but barring that, it's really about the meaning of it, and we get to make the meaning.
Yeah.
Wah, wah.
I have a question. Well, first of all, I want to tell you that my husband did die, and the way that you described that afterlife relationship, I don't know how you did that without having gone through that. Because, I do that. I speak to him, dance with him. I wake up in the morning holding my own hands, but we're holding hands, So I get that you're talking a lot about joy and friendship, and I wanted to know why you chose a mass shooting as a setting for the death, as opposed to just her losing her husband in some way and getting through it with her friends. Because from 2016 to now, mass shootings have taken on a whole life of their own, where we almost are numb to them. And so having this published now, brings that to the forefront. But how did you choose that? Why did you choose a mass?
Exactly that reason, to bring it to
bring it back.
Yeah.
I
think
2016.
Well, I started writing in 2016, but the thing about this book, there have been at certain points. So it takes place in 2016, and she becomes like an accidental sort of celebrity activist. She doesn't intend to, but much like what later happened to the Parkland kids, which I wrote this pre-Parkland, but where she just said something and then it goes viral, and then they want more of her, and she doesn't actually want to give more of herself because she's also grieving a complicated marriage, and she can't just be like, and I loved him so much. She's still dancing with God, how do I feel? And she's lost, but she had a previous career working in broadcast journalism that she gave up. So this sort of dance with the old job is also how do I get the thing I wanted when this is the thing I lost, and how do I that exploitation piece too, which I always sort of think of Amanda Klutz, whose husband famously died from COVID, and she sort of blew up,
Right.
and now she's on the talk, and I'm sure a person, I know people that that was not a easy thing to navigate personally, right? All this attention, and she was trying to become an actress, and now she gets all this attention, and how do you manage that? And so. But for me, the reason to write about the mass shooting was just that in 2016, it's almost like hurricane season in this country, where it's boom, boom, there's a lot of them in quick succession, and then you kind of go through we're in a lull right now, right? But they're going to come again. Hurricane season is right around the corner, and then it's oh my God, and then we're wrecked again, and then we forget, and and that's just what happens in this country. So we were in one of those, and I was I want to do something, but I had already worked in nonprofits, and I wasn't really interested in joining another one, and I didn't want to start a political movement, not today anyway. And I was just I was tired. I had a 1-year-old. That felt like a lot. So I decided I would write a book, but I really a lot of the book does talk about also what happens when you become a gun control advocate, and the death threats that end up at her door, and and she gets sued, and there's legitimate consequences of speaking up that she has to go through and navigate in the middle of grief. And so I sort of saw that as an interesting proposition, that yes, it is a story of grief and losing a spouse, but it's also in this like wider lens of like, how do you do this very awkward dance, which is already grief,
Very public.
very publicly, and still like protect a child, which is also part of it, and still be a mom every day, so.
I have the question along those same lines of choosing the plot. Can you switch from writer to editor easily? I know you said you hired someone else to do an
Yes.
editor, but you
Yeah.
could go.
I could
and
not
then-
edit my own book.
Yeah. And then was that
I hired much smarter people than myself. to do
Yeah.
that, Gina Frangello.
or
And Tamala. Yeah, I had Tammy and Gina do it, so.
and then did you start the imprint to get this book
No.
out? Or what was that?
Yeah, so I was, I started Rise Books, because I have a writing coaching, business called Rise Writers, that has lovely people like Stephanie Mato here in it. And I do group coaching classes and I have private clients, but in my group coaching, I had folks that I especially felt like that were beautiful writers, but they were never going to get a traditional book deal. They just didn't have the platform. They didn't have the byline, like that wasn't going to be an option for them. And I wanted to create a home for them. So I already had a few people lined up for Rise Books, and simultaneously I had an agent, and this was out to publishers. And I was in the like terrific badlands of book publishing where you get a few quick no's and then you just get a lot of silence. And I was in the silence. That might have turned into a yes that I waited around, but I had another option. And one of my authors, who is a witch, was actually the one that said, like, why don't you do it at Rise Books? And I was like, fuck, I don't want to self-publish. But then I realized, like, I'm not, and this is, and in fact, I get to be the first author, which means that, like, if I screw it up for me, like I won't be that mad because it's me. And then I will also learn how to do it better for the next folks. So.
Yeah, you can tell the joke now. Sorry.
Someone should leave. I'm still in it, friend. Thank you, guys. Yeah, thank you for coming. I love you.
Read it, you shouldn't tell the joke. Don't tell the joke, it's on the first page.
It's on the first page.
Just read the book.
Yeah.
I already read the
Okay.
joke, that's great.
Yeah. Anybody else? It's time to sign.
It's time to sign
wrapping
some
us up.
books, yeah.
Lauren's wrapping us up.